A very good evening to all. I thank CCM Department of IMS and Sam Hospital for giving me this opportunity to discuss few things regarding our correlation of our patient with hematology. And the topic given me to discuss for today is session is principle, protocol, and drugs to treat hematological malignancies and their implications in ICU. So, the managing leukemia and lymphoma definitely involves toxic chemotherapy. And as we know that every drug has its own side effect profile, and these chemotherapy medications are no different, but even they have more potential life-threatening complications. So, ranging from mild nausea, vomiting, skin discoloration, nail discoloration to hair loss, to ranging from severe life-threatening combination complications can be a possibility in patients undergoing chemotherapy depending upon the drugs they take. So, and some have definitely potential life-threatening complications. And but as we know that this hematology and oncology is a subject in which not only this but in every aspects in every subject there is more and more new drugs are coming up these days, and this is definitely in our branch we have newer molecules present. Recently we have been starting using many newer molecules and many things are in the pipeline also. So definitely the newer molecule has come up. They are more in specifically targeted to the disease pathology, specifically targeted to its specific molecular normality. So definitely, as the drugs has a targeted action, definitely it has a less possibility and propensity of conventional side effects of a conventional chemotherapy. But no doubt these drugs are not free of complications. They have their own set of specific complications. Like in acute thrombolytic leukemia, we have a molecule known as or transretinoic acid. So previously we were using daunorubicin, idarubicin along with cytarabine for this APML, but there were increased incidences of chemotherapy related complications, more chances of infection, febrile neutropenia, higher mortality. But after the advent of these new drugs, the treatment scenario has changed a lot, and these conventional chemotherapy side effects are no more seen in this nowadays, but they do have their own set of complications like differences in syndrome usually seen in those patients taking atra and arsenic trioxide, and their management also quite different from the conventional ones. Similarly, for CML, chronic myeloid leukemia, before the advent of the targeted agent, previously the bone marrow transplant was the only known cure for the disease, but after the invent of imatinib, which is a tyrosine kinase inhibitor, the treatment scenario has changed completely and it has become a revolutionary step in the management of leukemia history. And after that, taking only single drug has eliminated all the complications of the chemotherapy which was known earlier, and life has become so easy for these people. But it do have some specific complications, and so keeping ourselves updated with the national international data helps us handle these types of complications in our day-to-day practice. So I plan to discuss only a few clinical cases to understand them better. A 25-year-old male, a case of B cell acute lymphoblastic leukemia, he started with induction phase chemotherapy. He was put in BFM 2002 protocol, and as part of this induction phase, on the phase B, they receive cyclophosphamide injection at 1 gram per meter square. The dose as per his body surface area was 1.5 gram. So after receiving that, on the next day he complained of some reddish urine, but he didn't have any history of fever, no burning micturition, no increased frequency of micturition, and no other bleeding manifestation was there. And on evaluation, hemoglobin was 9, WBC was 5400, platelet count was 1.8 lakhs, and a PTT was sent at that point of time. It was normal. Urine routine examination showed presence of plenty of RBCs, but pus cells were not increased. And then on USG abdomen, it was seen that echogenic material was then within the bladder, possibly clots. So what was done? Hydration was started, IV plus oral. So what we were managing in for the definitely the patient was having hemorrhagic cystitis, which is a known potential known complications of cyclophosphamide. And at that point of time, urology consultation was sent, and with the help of the bladder irrigation was done after putting a 3-lumen catheter. Along with that, injection Mesna was also given and continued till the symptoms subsided. So, what is hemorrhagic cystitis? The cyclophosphamide and ifosfamide are the drugs with similar structure and metabolism, and they undergo transformation to their active metabolite known as acrolein. And hemorrhagic occurs when this acrolein within the urinary epithelium within the bladder binds to the proteins contained within the bladder epithelium, utilizes the sulfhydryl group, and initiates an inflammatory process. So if you give hydration, that hyperhydration with Mesna, it binds to the acrolein within the urine and prevents acrolein to come in direct contact with the uroepithelium. So concurrent administration helps in inhibiting the direct binding of acrolein to the uroepithelium and reduce not only the incidence but also the severity of the hemorrhagic cystitis. It is usually, but we were lucky in this case that the severity we saw in this patient was very less, and we subsided only within few days. But usually it is seen in the hematopoietic stem cell transplant recipients, in which cases they have to be given higher doses of cyclophosphamide, and which is usually higher than the dose that is used in cases of acute leukemia. But if this hemorrhagic process continues more than 7 days, then other pathologies should be suspected, and other known culprits are viral, that is adenovirus or polyomavirus, like BK virus is the well-known culprit in these cases. This figure schematically represents that cyclophosphamide within the liver gets metabolized to converted to acrolein, which is the active one within the circulation. They get filtered in the kidney, they come to the urinary bladder, gets a chance to get attached to the uroepithelium. When they interact with the uroepithelium, they cause the injury, start the inflammation, and cause the bleeding. So if we give Mesna, that will bind to the acrolein within the urinary bladder or urinary tract and prevent the acrolein from coming in direct contact with the uroepithelium and causing subsequent damage. And hyperhydration definitely helps in washing out this molecule if at all they are present. So not only they can prevent this dreaded incidents from happening, that can also reduce the severity if it happens at all. So in the treatment, usually if the disease is severe in clinical manifestation, it becomes challenging for the treating physician, as the symptoms depending upon the severity of the symptoms, the management differs. Like we can do a simple bladder irrigation, continue the hyperhydration, and this irrigation with isotonic or isosaline may be required to break up an obstetric uropathy. If the clots usually block the urinary tract irrigation, they can be dislodged. Intravesical therapy, that is installation of some chemicals to cause mucosal fibrosis, can be given to stop the bleeding, and some hyperbaric oxygen therapy also known to have some beneficial effect. Even in more severe cases, embolization or ligation of internal iliac arteries may be required if these measures fail. And finally, cystectomy has been known to been carried out in some massive bladder hemorrhage cases, but it definitely is associated with a high mortality rate, not only due to the complication but also may be related to the surgical process involved. And so coming to the next case, a 25-year female, this is also a case of the B cell ALL on induction phase as per the BFM 2002 protocol. They usually get in the induction phase starting from the steroids to vincristine, daunorubicin, L-asparagine, cyclophosphamide, cytarabine. So she was exposed to these drugs, but one day she developed blurring of vision, headache, vomiting, seizures. Initially started focal, but later it was generalized. Then she was shifted to ICU. On examination, pulse rate was 100 per minute. Blood pressure was found to be high. It was 160 systolic over 100 millimeter diastolic, respiratory 20. Saturation of oxygen was 99% in room air. On when she was examined after the subsidence of seizure, definitely she was postictal phase, plantar was bilateral extensor, so we could not localize whether she was having any focal neurological deficit or not. People were normal, so the simultaneous MRI brain was advised. The major complication potentially that can happen during the leukemia during treatment is bleed or any thrombus was common. But what is the finding in this case? The MRI brain showed demyelination of occipital and bilateral temporal and parietal lobes. Query PRES. So what is PRES? This press. It's posterior reversible encephalopathy syndrome. So let's see what we did. We have given her anti-epileptics like lorazepam, phenytoin loading dose, levetiracetam, anti-hypertensive was started. Chemotherapy was stopped immediately for few days till stabilization. Gradually on the same day sensorium improved, and she had no more episodes of seizure after that. She was kept in ICU for 2 more days, gradually shifted to ward, continued the rest of the chemotherapy, but we avoided using the L-asparagine, which is the known culprit for these complications. In the current phase of therapy, the rest of the doses of the L-asparagine were omitted. And after that, she has completed the all rest phases of the chemotherapy, but in the reinduction phase, they have again some doses of the L-asparagine, that is usually after 2 months of the induction phase. At that point of time, we have reintroduced the drug, and we didn't have any such events later on, and she is doing well till today. This was the MRI brain done at the type of time, which showed presence of the demyelination in the bilateral occipital and few in the parietal lobes and also in the periventricular region. So why it is called posterior? Because this posterior portions of the brain usually show these findings, and reversible. Yes, definitely after if you repeat these MRIs after an interval, it's not defined actually, but later on when the patient becomes symptoms free, a repeat MRI can be done, not mandatory also, can be done, to see that these findings usually reverse. These are still violation, only a reversible one. So and encephalopathy syndrome. So it's a syndrome because it consists of a lot of the clinical and clinical finding. They has to be added up. So in 1996, a group of people have described this syndrome to be a reversible syndrome of headache, altered mental functioning, seizures, loss of vision with abnormalities and neuroimaging in the posterior regions of the cerebral hemisphere. That's why the name was given. But as per the early reports, this syndrome were present in those patients, those who are having earlier existing renal insufficiency or hypertension or were immunocompromised. But nowadays it's a well-known complications of the chemotherapy, and even this press is now considered as one of the most common abnormality leading to seizures in children with leukemia. What are the usual presentations? Usually headache, altered sensorium, confusion, seizures, vomiting, altered visual perception. Because the posterior portion, the occipital lobe is commonly affected, they do contribute to visual disturbances or visual symptoms, that is ranging from the blurring vision, hemianopia, visual hallucination, and even cortical blindness. One patient had present was saying the symptom like amaurosis fugax, like some dark screen was coming from one side and going to one side, other side. And hypertension, hypomagnesemia are additional diagnostic criteria but are not always present. We may see a hypertension due to a dysfunction in the autoregulation. So the cardinal features of the press are both clinical and radiologic. Abnormalities are usually observed in the bilaterally and may involve also parietal and occipital lobe also. So this press term may be a misnomer, but because these posterior regions are not mandatorily involved, the clinical findings may also involve the other areas of the brain, also like periventricular area, temporal lobes also. But typically, as per the literature, MRI or CT findings show changes in the posterior circulations. And if press is suspected, not CT, usually MRI should be preferred, including the T21 diffusion weighted images and FLAIR images for more accurate diagnosis. And what is the mechanism? Mechanism the press is, it has been proposed that nobody knows the exact mechanism, but the mechanism proposed the sudden elevation in the systemic blood pressure exceeding the autoregulatory capacity of the brain. It leads to capillary leakage. So elevations in the PP which exceeds the autoregulatory capacity of the brain leads to capillary leakage and subsequent vasogenic edema and in the different region of the brain. But why posterior? So it has been proposed again that the posterior circulation have usually this area have usually have a lesser sympathetic innervation, so that might be associated with this type of finding in these regions also. Apart from that, hypomagnesemia and vascular instability due to the toxic effect of the chemotherapy may also contribute to damage the vasculature or the blood-brain barrier. That may also have some contribution in developing the syndrome. So most cases of the press occur during the induction phase of chemotherapy because the lot of number of drugs are known to be associated with it, ranging from the vincristine to intrathecal methotrexate, L-asparagine, high-dose methotrexate, cyclophosphamide, and cytarabine also can be a culprit. But commonly we know that L-asparagine is a major culprit. So we in that case avoided the L-asparagine further use in that phase of chemotherapy. But the treatment usually early and aggressively controlling hypertension and seizure is the mainstay. So we had to control these two things. Along with that, we have to avoid the causative agent if we know at that point of time. But it has been shown that in later phases, reintroducing the drug may not cause any further harm and may not cause also permanent neurological sequelae are not known to be present. So moving to the third last case, I want to discuss a case 45-year male, known case of again ALL, but this was T-cell ALL. On consolidation of phase of the BFM 2002 protocol, he has received a high dose methotrexate at a dose of 5 gram per meter square. It was around 6 to 7 gram as per the BSA. So after 3 days he developed oral mucosal ulcers, pain during swallowing solids and to liquids also. He had loose motions, so 4 to 5 times per day. Hemoglobin was found to be 8, WBC was a bit low, 3400, platelets also low, 80,000. Total and direct bilirubin were 2.2 and 1.6, SGOT and SGPT were 265 and 320, alkaline phosphate was 180, urea was 65 and creatinine 1.8. So what were we dealing with? It was mucositis or oral mucositis. So it's a very well known complications of the many chemotherapies, but methotrexate is mainly known to this type of side effects. And though we have a WHO grading for that mucositis ranging from 0 or none no mucositis, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, that 1 is mild, 2 is moderate, 3 is severe, 4 is life threatening. But how to remember? The 0 grade 0, no mucositis, 1 is only erythema, 2 is ulcer, but in 1 and 2 patient can take diet. But in 3, along with ulcers, patient is usually unable to swallow solids but can take liquid foods. But in 4, even patient cannot take liquid foods also. So oral alimentation is not possible. You have to depend upon the IV fluids or parenteral nutrition. So 0 is no, 1 is erythema, 2 is ulcer, 3 is no solid, 4 is no liquid. So how to prevent? Is there any way we can prevent it? If we know that this is a potential complication of the high dose methotrexate therapy, is there any way to prevent it? Yes. There are a number of protocols usually followed in varieties of the hematological malignancies. In leukemia, the methotrexate has to be given as 24-hour infusion. In some high-grade lymphoma, CNS lymphoma, methotrexate usually given as 3 to 4-hour infusion. But in any case, to prevent this the complications of the methotrexate, we have to maintain proper hydration, exclude if patients have any third space body fluid collection, and to be sure that the patient's renal functions are normal. And apart from that, we have to hydrate the patient and with sodium bicarbonate in a target to keep the urine pH at least more than 7. So if we maintain an alkaline urine pH, in that pH methotrexate usually gets excreted, gets dissolved within the urine and gets excreted. But if the urine pH is low, it has methotrexate has the potential to crystallize within the urine renal tubules. Then if it crystallizes, then acute kidney injury can occur, which may lead to not only increasing the derangement of the renal function, but also retention or non-excretion of the drug, which can further add to the toxic effects ranging from the hepatotoxicity to cytopenia to mucositis. So along with the alkalination, the urine, which not only prevents this, we have to ensure that even few hours following the completion of the chemotherapy, we have to maintain that pH of the urine by hydration along with sodium bicarbonate, and some specific doses of leucovorin has to be given at specified time intervals as per different protocols. It is known as leucovorin rescue, which is an active form of folic acid or known as folinic acid. So apart from this leucovorin rescue, if the patient, there are prophylactic fixed dose administration in every high dose methotrexate protocol. But if we apart from it, we can send a methotrexate level at specific point of time, usually at 42 hours of hours after the starting of methotrexate infusion. We can send a methotrexate level. If the level is below a defined point, then further leucovorin doses are usually not required. But if methotrexate level is higher than a specified amount, then leucovorin further doses are usually required. So methotrexate level helps in monitoring how much doses of leucovorin patient may require. If we do not have the facility to do methotrexate level in house or in our city, then we have to treat empirically, see the clinical picture, and to decide how long we have to give leucovorin rescue. And apart from that, symptomatic relief is also important. We can give symptoms to the patient with some local anesthesia or local analgesia with sucralfate oxytocin suspension. Apart from that, tramadol, buprenorphine pads, fentanyl, morphine can be given as per the severity of the patient. So there are a lot of apart from these the 3 cases, there are a lot of more complications are there in hematology practice, ranging from chemotherapy, conventional chemotherapy related side effects like hemorrhagic cystitis, as you discussed, methotrexate induced mucositis, anthracycline can cause cardiomyopathy, L. asparaginase can cause posterior reversible encephalopathy syndrome, Vincristine can have the potential to cause peripheral neuropathy, SIAD, syndrome of inappropriate secretion, vocal cord palsy. Also, I have reported a case of Vincristine-induced reversible vocal cord palsy in a young adult of ALL during induction phase of chemotherapy, and it reversed in the second phase, that is the consultation phase. Patient symptomatically improved and the palsy was reversed. It was documented, and we could report that case. And regarding the other, apart from this conventional chemotherapy, targeted molecules are there like ATRA or ATO, like all-trans-retinoic acid and arsenic trioxide. They have their own special side effect profile, like the differentiation syndrome, which needs a separate discussion. And small molecule inhibitors like idelalisib, which is PI3 kinase delta inhibitor used in many cases of lymphoma, they have their own set of complications like pneumonitis, colitis. Ibrutinib is a Bruton tyrosine kinase inhibitor commonly used in CLL or mantle cell lymphoma, can have the potential to complicate with bleeding complications. Monoclonal antibodies like rituximab, daratumumab have infusion related toxicities, and rituximab is a well known culprit to cause a hepatitis B reactivation and complicate the further scenario of the disease. And non-chemotherapeutic drugs like ATG or antithymocyte globulin is used in the treatment of the severe and very severe aplastic anemia patients, is usually associated with serum sickness. And in that case, we usually after ATG, giving ATG, we keep the patient admitted for at least 2 weeks, because the chances of developing serum sickness is more in this period. And to prevent this, we usually give steroids, initially IV followed by oral steroid for 2 weeks at least. But if patient develops these symptoms, usually patients presents with rash in the palmar and plantar region with arthritis, fever. In that case, we have to give hydrocortisone intravenously till the symptoms subside. And apart from that, bone marrow transplant is own set of complications, which are earlier discussed by Dr. Priyanka Samuel Madam in the earlier presentations. But and the CAR T cell therapy also, I think it's planned to be discussed in the later discussion. And CAR T cell is a newer cellular therapy. There's a chimeric antigen receptor T cell therapy, and BiTE is bispecific T cell engager. These are newer cellular therapies to have a targeted approach to treat this refractory and relapsed and refractory cases of leukemia, lymphoma. But they do have their own set of side effect profile, ranging from cytokine release syndrome to cytotoxic immune effector cell associated neuropathy, hypogammaglobulinemia, and infections also. So there are a lot of things to be discussed, but I just wanted to highlight these three cases, and just to brief the settings only. So thank you. And this page shows the chemo man. What is the chemo man? This is nothing but a picture commonly popular in internet, which shows that the drugs in the specific places, that which drugs cause which adverse effects. B. Bleomycin and busulfan causes pulmonary fibrosis, shown in the place of the lungs. C. Cisplatin and carboplatin are nephrotoxic, shown and autotoxic, so they are been shown near the places of the ears and the kidneys. D. Doxorubicin is cardiotoxic. Not only doxorubicin, daunorubicin, idarubicin, mitoxantrone, all these are anthracyclines. They have potential cardiomyopathy as a complication. P. Cyclophosphamide can cause hemorrhagic cystitis, as you have discussed. M. F. That is methotrexate and flyfluorouracil can cause myelosuppression. Those are in the place of the bone marrow. It has been just to represent only. And this vincristine cause vincristine, vinblastine, these are called vinorelbine, these are called vincalcolate, that have the potential to cause peripheral neuropathy. So thank you for giving me the opportunity. If there are any questions, I am ready to take up those.